Okay, hi, it's Joanna with Blissful Baby Sleep Coaching, and I hope we're live. Um, so it is almost 1:30 p.m. Pacific time on Friday, May 15th, and I am starting my Get Your Life Back. It starts with sleep video series, live video series. So this is new for me. I normally love to do all my sessions on Zoom so that I can see you and I can interact with you. And so this is going to be new for me. So I'm going to wait for some other people to show up. But if there's anybody in here and you want to tell me where you're from, I'd love to see who's here. Um, and get this party started, and I'm going to be learning as I'm going, and I might not be acute enough to be able to see your comments, and I do apologize in advance, because I'm looking here to see if I can see comments, and I can't. Oh, look. Oh, I can. Yay, Casey's here. Thank you, Casey, for letting me know you're here. All right, so I feel so awkward not being able to interact with everybody. Oh, and Megan's here. Awesome. This is great. So these are some moms that Casey's a past client of mine, and we sleep coached her first baby, and now we're going to be talking about her second baby. And Megan's texting in from Connecticut, and she submitted a question today. So thank you so much for commenting. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So because Casey and Megan, they have their questions ready, and we're going to talk about them. Okay. I think I'm going to start with you, Casey. And as you can see, I got all my little forms and all my notes and all that good stuff. All right, so let me just introduce myself again. I am Joanna Clark with Blissful Baby Sleep Coaching, and this is the new Facebook Live series I'm going to start doing weekly called Get Your Life Back. It starts with sleep, and I'm doing this because you guys have been asking for it. Okay, so I'm getting visible. You guys are asking for it, so here I am. I'm live and in person. As most of my clients know, I love doing Zoom. I have no problem with that because I can see you and I can interact and we can laugh and we can giggle. But me just talking to myself feels completely bizarre. So I just want to let you know I'm going to be getting used to myself in this way. But what's great about this is that people can go back and easily reread, re-listen to this and get education. And really what I'm trying to do in these get your life back, it all starts with sleep, is really to try to give accurate and reliable information uh, about sleep. Because right now, in terms of COVID, it is such a difficult time for families that previously had sleep issues that never got resolved. Or I'm also seeing in my practice a lot of families that had beautiful sleep issues, the children have regressed. And the reality is that we're already living in a very stressful environment with COVID. And I kind of firmly believe the babies are really picking up on this kind of stress that's in the air. And so we're seeing a lot of changes in sleep behaviors, or we're seeing acceleration of really challenging sleep behaviors. And so I really want to be here to be able to provide this place to come every week to get your questions answered from a reliable, accurate source. Please remember that I am a gentle sleep coach. I'm a certified and gentle sleep coach. I do not believe in cry it out. My whole emphasis is to do everything to minimize tears, minimize frustration, minimize confusion. And it's really based on sleep science, behavioral science, and attachment theory. So everything I'm going to be speaking about today, please know that I'm coming from those three lenses: sleep science, behavioral science, and attachment theory. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into Casey's situation and her question. So Casey has a 9-month-old, and what we've got going on here is early rising. So let me explain what that is. So early rising is when a child wakes up between 4 and 6 a.m. and they are very awake, and they are often wanting to start their day, or they're so awake that it becomes very difficult for you to help your baby go back to sleep. So from the parent that is experiencing that, the parent that has to attend to an early rising event typically has to do a lot to help the baby go back to sleep. So lots of holding, rocking, nursing, singing, like whatever works. The child is going to need that, and they're going to need it for a long period of time. And some nights they'll be successful going back to sleep under those conditions with all that sleep support, and some nights they'll just flat out stay awake and want to start their day. And this is very challenging for families, obviously, because we're exhausted. And then the other thing that early rising does is then it kind of creates a really difficult situation to have an appropriate nap sequence throughout the day, right? So if your child wakes up at 5, they're going to probably be exhausted again by 7. And then all of a sudden they're taking a whole bunch of multiple little naps, or it becomes more difficult for you to understand when you're going to offer the nap. So I want to tell you a couple things about early rising. So early rising is triggered by 4 things. Okay. So here are the 4 things that triggers early rising. Number 1, if your child is going to bed at the onset of sleep at bedtime, if they're going to bed with a sleep crutch, meaning if at the onset of sleep your child is being nursed down, rocked down, held, sang, co-sleep, if there is something being done to and for your child at the onset of sleep at bedtime, then what happens, and the reason why it triggers early rising, is that in the middle of the night, when they have that early rising event, they wake up and they look around and they want to have whatever sleep crutches you offered them at the onset of sleep. Okay, so that's the first trigger point. So if you're having early rising, the first question you ask yourself is, does my child have any sleep crutches at the onset of sleep at bedtime? Okay, the second trigger point is my child getting enough daytime sleep? So every age and stage of a child's development, there are minimum daily sleep expectations. So for example, Casey has a 9-month-old, and typically a 9-month-old will be taking 2 to 3 naps a day, and they will need about 2.5 to 3.25 hours of daytime sleep spread between 2 or 3 naps. 2 or 3 naps, because at 9 months of age, some babies are starting to drop that 3rd nap. Okay, so if the baby is not getting the daytime sleep expectation for their age and stage, and in this case we're talking about Casey's 9-month-old, then the lack of daytime sleep is what triggers the early rising event in the early morning. So one of the ways that you can start to manage early rising is to really, 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 really focus on getting the daytime sleep expectations met of your child. And if you don't know what those are, then number 1, you can go to the Academy of Pediatrics and look up the age and stage of your child. Or, gosh, I wish I had this. In the chat, tell me that you need that chart, and send me your email, and I will email you the chart, my ages and stages chart. That's really fabulous to have on hand. It's a fabulous chart that has ages and stages for both daytime sleep and nighttime sleep, and expectations between sleep windows for the ages and stages. So anybody that wants that, if you could please, in the comments, if you don't mind, either direct message me or in the comments, put your first name, last name, and email, and I will make sure to get that to you. Okay, so circling back. So the second trigger is not enough daytime sleep. So Casey, I would say, okay, number 1, is my child going down too drowsy? Or is my child being put to sleep, with sleep crutches? Number 2, is my child getting enough daytime sleep? Okay. Number 3 trigger is between the child's last nap and the time they're actually falling asleep at bedtime, am I nailing the right sleep window? How long is that interval? So typically with a 9-month-old baby, from the time they wake up from their afternoon nap to the time they should be asleep at bedtime, not getting ready for sleep, but being asleep, is typically no more than 3.5 to 4.5 hours. And so if a child is going to bed too drowsy and they're missing their sleep window night after night, that will trigger an early rising event. Now, what's also really difficult about early rising is that of all the arousals your child will experience at night, and by the way, it is perfectly appropriate and normal for children to have partial arousals at night. Partial arousal is when they're going from deep sleep to light sleep. There's a slight level of wakefulness. And in that level of wakefulness, the child wakes up, kind of looks around, and if they have their sleep skills, they're able to consolidate and fall back into that sleep cycle. If your child has a partial arousal and does not have their sleep skills, then they look around and they want whatever sleep crutch they had at the onset of sleep. And so the hard thing about early rising is that it's the last partial arousal of all night. It's the hardest arousal for any human being, let alone a baby, to go back to sleep if they don't already have their sleep skills at the easiest time, which is at the onset of sleep at bedtime. So when a person is trying to get rid of early rising, they typically won't get rid of it until the child is really truly doing drowsy but awake at bedtime, and the child has consolidated the majority of the other arousals all night long. And then you have to manage those triggers all day, every single day, for multiple, sometimes weeks at a time before this will finally drift away. The other thing you have to do with early rising is you do not want to expose your child to light or feed them before 6 a.m. So if you are in the motion to try to wean and you keep feeding your baby at 5:45 a.m., then what you're doing by accident is anchoring the early rising to continue, because now you're training the body to expect calories at the time that you don't want them waking up at all. So even though sometimes that's like the fastest, quickest way to get them to go back to sleep, if your ultimate goal is that you want it gone completely, then anchoring it with a feed, unfortunately, by accident, perpetuates the arousal at that time. So it is, early rising is really hard, you guys. When I'm working with clients one-on-one, it is always the most challenging part of the sleep training process to finally get the early rising behavior to soften and disappear, and to have that baby master the ability to regulate, settle, and soothe back to sleep after an early rising event. Casey had also said, hey, I really want my child to sleep from 7 to 7. Wouldn't we all? Wouldn't that be awesome? Okay, so most babies, they're at 9 months of age. 7 to 7 is possible, but not every baby is willing to do a full 12 hours. Some babies are more willing to do, 3 hours of daytime sleep and only 11 hours at night, in which case maybe you could hope for 7 to 6. But I will tell you this. Don't ever have the expectation that a later bedtime would mean that the child would sleep longer, because that's actually a myth, unfortunately. So what happens to a lot of families if they're having early rising is they start bumping the bedtime later, hoping that that 11-hour stretch that they're looking for will help shift the early rising behavior. But unfortunately, sometimes that actually makes the early rising behavior worse. So again, remember that early rising is triggered by daytime sleep, wakefulness intervals, and the state of the child at the onset of sleep. So you have to start working on those behaviors first before you, and getting the right sleep window at bedtime before you start trying to assume that if you make bedtime 8 o'clock that they'll sleep till 7. That can sometimes happen, but only after you have corrected the early rising behavior first, and then you can shift the bedtime later to try to get like 8 to 7 or something like that. But it doesn't solve early rising if you just move the schedule, and hope that that one little tweak is going to make a difference. So I guess what I'm trying to say, you guys, with early rising is this is not a one tweak protocol. Like early rising has many triggers, and you have to be relentless in managing the triggers, and then you have to be relentless about not exposing the child to light before 6 a.m. and not feeding them while the child learns how to go back to sleep at that time. So I'm hoping that, Casey, that was enough information for you to understand, at least how to kind of start thinking about early rising with your 9-month-old. Of course, if you need me further, you know where to find me. And you can always schedule an individual call with me to get some direct laser coaching on your specific situation so we can have a little bit more back and forth. Okay, so I am going to move on next to Megan. And thank you, Megan, for sending me in a question. Megan has a 10-month-old. And let me just give you guys a little bit of point of context with what's going on with Megan. So then her question will make more sense. So Megan has a 10-month-old, and right now at bedtime, her child loves to snuggle and fall asleep in mom and dad's arms. And then in the middle of the night, he will wake up sometimes between 2 and 5 times. And at those wakings, she often has to replace the pacifier, do some rubbing, do some more snuggling. She's also having a situation where her 10-month-old is taking 2 naps a day, which is normal. 10-month-old is usually done with the transition and is doing 2 naps a day. And she's getting about an hour each for naps, which is great. But really what the big problem is number one, she's 2 to 5 times a night, either mom or dad are up or both of them are up, and the parents are both really tired. Their patience is short with each other, and they literally have no time for themselves in the evening, or even time for each other. So this is a very common concern when families are having sleep struggles. The demands on the parents at night is like kind of relentless. And sometimes the nights are very unpredictable, meaning, is this going to be a 2-night wake up night, or is this going to be a 5 wake up night? And by the way, who's going to take the front end of the night and who's going to take the back end of the night? And by the way, will the things that we offer this little baby boy even work in the middle of the night? Will he accept the pacifier and the rubbing and the snuggling and the holding? And it just gets really, really hard and tiresome for the parents. So what the question was that Megan had was, how do we gently help him learn to fall asleep without us? We don't mind snuggling him before bed, but it's become a crutch. And this often leads to us having to do more in the middle of the night for hours. We are weak when he cries in our prior attempts to sleep train, and everyone was super upset during those attempts to sleep train, and it felt very ineffective and traumatic. Okay, so Megan, I hear you. I'm so glad you asked this question. So important. Okay. I think the way I'd like to answer this question is to really define for you what it means to sleep train. Because, the word or the concept or the thought of, oh my gosh, I might have to sleep train my child, can often cause a lot of fear, anxiety, guilt, confusion, arguments between the parents. Lots of times the concept of we might have to sleep train immediately triggers lots of arguments in the household and lots of fear among the parents about what are we going to do, how are we going to do it, who's going to do it, what's it going to look like, is this the right choice? Like, there's all these questions that go around it. So let me talk to you about what it is. So sleep training really is all about marrying sleep science and behavioral science to help create the right circumstances and the right environment for your child to learn the skills of sleep. And there are 3 skills that a child needs to learn when they learn to sleep. So although, sleep is a biological need, we all need sleep, okay? But you have to start looking at sleep through the lens of a learned skill. So, for example, Megan's got a 10-month-old. So at 10 months, her child has learned how to roll and sit up and crawl. And before she knows it, her child's going to be standing and then walking. Okay. So those are all biological needs. We all learn how to do those, but those are also learned skills. And so parents, when the child is learning how to crawl and to stand and to walk, we have to create the right environment and the right circumstances for our child to practice, 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 practice until they get to mastery. And when they're learning to practice those skills, it can be a little awkward and messy. Okay. So if you kind of take that mindset of knowing, Megan, what you've kind of lived through watching your 10-month-old learn some of those skills, if you kind of say to yourself, okay, so now I'm willing to look at sleep as a learned skill. So then the skills that they need to learn to have really good sleep skills are 3 skills. They have to learn how to self-regulate, self-settle, and self-soothe. So they have to learn 3 skills, each skill individually, and then they have to learn how to do them in sequence. And so really what sleep training, it's not a bad thing. It's the most gorgeous thing you could ever do for your child. It's the most loving, beautiful, lifelong sleep skill you can offer them, is to create the right environment and the right circumstances for them to learn how to regulate, settle, and soothe to sleep at the onset of sleep at bedtime, so they can begin to use that same skill at every arousal that they have all night long. So then they can begin to translate that same skill set to their naps. Okay, so that's really what sleep training is. So it's unfortunate that it has like a bad name, because actually it's just really, as a parent, it's probably your first big parenting decision of, I would like to teach my child X, right? So like, if at a 10-month-old, maybe the next decision you might be making is, I would like my child to do swim lessons. And then the next big one might be, I'd like my child to learn how, when they are like 3, potty train. And then it's, I'd like my child to transition into preschool. So you have to kind of look at sleep training as kind of your first big parenting decision to help your child learn a lifelong skill. And there are many ways that you can go about sleep training your child. And this is where I think the confusion comes in, and where the fear and the self-doubt comes in, is there are many, many methodologies in order to sleep train a baby. And the key is finding the right methodology for the age and stage of your child, and the right methodology that meets your parenting values and your family goals, and a methodology that you feel good enough about that both of you, both parents, can be in alignment, and that you can be consistent in the execution of your sleep plan. So what happens to a lot of families is they don't go into sleep training in any kind of thoughtful way. They just know they're having a crisis, the baby's not sleeping, they've read a little bit of this and they've done a little bit of that, and they all of a sudden start to kind of throwing solutions at the baby, like, try this one night, try this one night, try this one night. And this baby is getting a very inconsistent response from the family. I'm not saying that's what happened with you, Megan, because I don't know your specifics on what exactly happened when you sleep trained, but I'm just expressing what a lot of families talk to me when they come to me after failed attempts at sleep training. Obviously, I'd like to know what they did and what happened, and to help them see that they didn't necessarily do it wrong, or that they made a mistake, that they just didn't recognize and see it through this lens of a learned skill, that you have to kind of create the right environment and circumstances for a skill to be learned. And sleep training takes often 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the level of sleep crutches the child has. And it also depends on the learning arc of the child. Some children are very, like, very slow and methodical learners. And then, they kind of get them up here and then they get really fast, or sometimes they're like really fast learners and then they plateau. And that's when sometimes parents like give up, and they don't get to the other side. And so there's just a lot of pieces of the puzzle to consider when you want to sleep train. But the key thing is to pick the methodology that feels right to both parents, and that it is a co-parenting decision. It's something you decide together. You pick on the methodology, you look at your calendar, and you commit to following the methodology for at least 2 to 3 weeks, so that your child can get that consistent response and be able to have time under those right circumstances and conditions to learn the sleep skills. Now, some families, I trained with Kim West, which is, she wrote the book Good Night, Sleep Tight. Okay. This is the Sleep Lady Shuffle. That's what one methodology is called, the Sleep Lady Shuffle. Some people call it the chair position. This is where you're physically in the room with your child and you are able to pick up and pat. But even with the most gentle method, which is what the Sleep Lady Shuffle is, if the parents don't execute the shuffle in the right way, it won't work, right? So it is, and that's why, like, honestly, so for some families, they can read this book, follow the advice page by page, and successfully execute because their baby's like a little bit more flexible with change. But some families will get to night 2 and read what's supposed to be happening and going, oh my gosh, this is totally not what's happening with my baby. Then those families are kind of like what I call like you're beyond the book, meaning your child is trickier. It's going to be a little bit more consideration for more factors that might be inhibiting sleep. And that's oftentimes when families will call me and ask for more support to walk them through day by day by day. So Megan, it's a little bit hard for me to know exactly the temperament of your son, but what I want you to take away from this component of my conversation with you is that I don't want you to, because you had a bad experience with sleep training, I don't want you to go forward and have that dread and that fear of it. I want you to actually kind of take a deep breath and have renewed faith that you can, in alignment with your husband, create the right circumstances and the right environment for your child to learn to regulate, settle, and soothe. And it's a matter of you guys finding the right methodology and then doing it and following it very methodically, day by day, consistently for 2 to 3 weeks, so that you give your child that time frame to practice, practice, practice until mastery. If this is something, that you feel like, oh gosh, I'm not sure if we can do it alone, or we're going to argue in the middle of the night, I mean, obviously reach out to me and we can talk a little bit more. Um, but I want you to have hope. And, the other thing is that right now Megan has a lot of sleep crutches. And the thing about sleep crutches is they don't go away on their own. Like, they just kind of I call it the menu expands. Like right now, her baby boy loves a pacifier replug, some rubbing and some snuggling. And, if she doesn't look at sleep coaching her baby, the likelihood is a couple months from now, he might need 10 pacifier replugs, 10 rubbing sessions, 10 more snuggling sessions. And now maybe he wants to like twirl her hair. Like there always will be more sleep crutches behind original sleep crutches, or the sleep crutches that you have will take longer and be harder for you to be successful with. Until you create the circumstances for them to learn independent sleep. So Megan, I'm hoping that answered your question. And I know you can do it. And the other side of the child learning independent sleep skills is that You're going to have a baby sleeping soundly throughout the night. So your baby will wake up happy and well rested. And then that means you and your husband will be happy and well rested. And you guys won't be grumpy with each other because the whole household's getting broken sleep. Okay. So I am going to move on to the next one, which is Deanna. And Deanna, hi, good to see you. Deanna I was doing some Zoom video series in the month of April in response to COVID to be available to moms. And Deanna is from Canada and she's got a 14-month-old. And the good news is through her experience of being on my Zoom sessions is that she was able to diminish during the course of the month of April all her sleep crutches at night, at bedtime and in the middle of the night. So awesome, Deanna. She took my advice and she worked very methodically. She was working with this book. So again, I'm not saying that no one can do it alone. Lots of people can. Deanna did. I have lots of families that listen to me talk about this and then they go and get this and their baby is amenable. What I'm saying is two things. Sometimes babies are not amenable and we have to like look more deeply at them and their temperament to kind of meet them halfway. Or sometimes the families will just be like, you know what? I know I'm smart enough to do this myself, but I am so tired. I don't have time to read. I don't have time to think. Please just hold my hand and walk me through step by step. And that's really where a coach can come in handy. But anyways, what's going on with Deanna is she's got a 14-month-old baby and she is wondering whether or not her baby is ready to transition from 2 naps to 1 nap. So let's talk about that. So typically a baby will transition from 2 naps to 1 nap around 15 to 18 months of age. So she's got a 14-month-old and she's kind of wondering like, is this transition happening? If it is, how do I do it? And then more importantly, should I force him to do it or should I let it take some time? So this is what she wrote. She said, I've been told by others that he must be on 1 nap at this point, but we are already dealing with early wakings, as you recall, like we talked about that earlier. So Deanna not only was eliminating sleep crutches when she was participating in my Zoom sessions, but she was really working super duper hard on eliminating early rising. And she said, we have had some split nights lately as well. I don't really want to add an overtired cycle on top of pushing the nap transition as well. Do I leave naps as they are since naps are good naps? Or will transitioning to 1 nap possibly help correct the early waking? Okay, such a good question, Deanna. I love Deanna's questions because they're so spot on. Okay, Deanna, if your child is experiencing early rising, do not switch to 1 nap. Okay. And the reason why is that transition going from 2 naps to 1 nap is a hard transition for most babies. And you get into no man's land where 2 naps is too much and 1 nap's not enough. And remember my whole talk on early rising, lack of daytime sleep triggers early rising. So Deanna's already having early rising. So if she were to try to force that transition and it wasn't going well, then she is going to perpetuate the early rising behavior that she's so desperately trying to monitor and manage right now. So the first thing you need to know, Deanna, is that some babies don't even transition to 1 nap a day until after 18 months. I have a family right now that the child is at 19 months is still taking 2 awesome naps a day, like gorgeous naps. And I'm like, don't fool with it. And there are some kids that literally still at age 4 and 5 are still taking 1 nap a day. So if you are one of the lucky ones that has a 14-month-old that still loves 2 naps a day, I highly recommend that you just say, hallelujah, this is awesome. My house is quiet 2 times a day. Now, if you find that 2 naps a day is causing bedtime to get too late, or you're getting some bedtime struggling, then what you could do is still keep the 2 naps a day, cap the morning nap. Gosh, it's saying we're having trouble playing this video. All right, well, I'm just going to keep talking and hope that this will come back. Oh my goodness, this is really awkward. See, you guys, I mean, I'm just here. I'm talking, I'm listening. So Deanna, I would not do that. Um, I would not cut the nap. I think that would be really, really difficult. And I would just cap, if you're finding that bedtime's getting hard, I would cap the morning nap to like 45 minutes and let your child still do the afternoon nap. And then and I would try that for like a week. That's the other thing I want to mention to you guys about early rising. Like sometimes you have to try a strategy for 3, 4, 5 days in a row and let that get a chance to work its magic before you move on to something else. Sometimes people move too quickly um, through different things, and they don't give enough time for something to actually kind of what I call soak in. Um, So I'm just scrolling through some of these questions. Okay, let me, gosh, I have no idea if this is even filming anymore. Can somebody let me know if they can still see me? Let me come down here at the bottom. Okay, you guys, it's 2:05 p.m. California time, and on my screen it says, sorry, we're having trouble playing this video. So I want to know, can you guys see me or hear me? If you can you go into the chat? Somebody? Oh my goodness. All right, I might have gotten cut off. I'm so sorry, you guys, but I'm going to be announcing another one. So I'm going to put something here in the chat so that anyone that listens to this can remember, anybody that wants to get okay, bedtime is still great. All right. I don't know what's going on. Someone let me know if you can hear me because I'm not seeing myself on live. Hmm. Okay, this is what I'm going to do, you guys, because I don't know what's going on. I'm so, so sorry. So what I'm going to do is I'm in the chat going to tell you that I've got a really good, I'm a contributing author in a best-selling book called The One Thing Every Mom Needs to Know. And right now you can get the whole book for 99 cents, and you can also download the audio chapter of Baby Sleep Strategies. So I'm going to recommend that you go grab this link, which is blissfulbabysleepcoaching.com, mom 2020, and that you add that in there and grab that audio chapter. And then anybody that wants the ages and stages, please go to this form, and I'm going to post this as well, that you can go in here and post this, and I'll put this in the chat here in a minute too, and it will allow you to get your email, and then I can send that to you. Okay, you guys, I think I'm going to probably end this live. Oh, good, you can still hear me, but can you guys see me? Oh, you guys can see me. Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know what's going on, you guys. I can't see myself, so that feels even weirder. I can't see myself. I can't hear myself. Like, I'm so sorry, you guys. This is really embarrassing, but we're just going to wing it. All right, I'm going to just keep answering questions. All right. So I'm going to follow up with Deanna. So I'm going to I'm going to put my little peepers on, and I'm going to I'm going to scroll through here, and I'm going to answer some more of your questions that you guys are coming. All right. So it says, Deanna, who we were talking about this whole, should I transition to two naps? And I'm like, no, Deanna, don't. And she's like, sounds great to me, Joanna. I'll totally enjoy my 2 naps until he's ready. Love it. Okay. So that's really cool. So let me come up here And look at, okay, so Casey, again, you guys, Casey was a client with her first baby, who, by the way, was a really tough baby. Oh my gosh, that baby was what we call a fast reactor. She got so mad at everything. She just gets mad at everything. She's just like a fast reactor. Like if you try to take away a toy, she just goes ballistic. So super fiery personality. And so Casey and her husband were like, oh my God, we need help. And so what Casey read here, she said, I read every book and tried every strategy first, because Casey's a teacher and an educator, and she's a really can-do kind of mom. So she had tried everything. And she said, we would not have been successful without Joanna. If Joanna got my first to sleep, she can get every baby to sleep, which I would agree. Again, her baby was super tricky, but we did it. And that's why Casey's coming here and look, you know, and having better luck with her second baby. And yes, we did restore calm and peace to their household, because it was crazy. Okay, so here's we've got Richard and Helena that are asking, how long will it take for a child to respect the red light of the baby hatch? Okay, great question. So let's talk about the hatch. So a Tot Clock is the newest version, and the best version out there right now is a Tot Clock. And let me show you guys what I have. This is not the hatch, but it's kind of the same concept. This is the Ollie, who's super duper cute. I love the Ollie, but right now they're out of Canada, so their shipping's a little slow because of COVID, but it's the same concept. It's an app-generated Tot Clock, which means that you, from your phone, can set the color to represent the time. So like you can make Ollie red to demonstrate bedtime. You can make Ollie green to demonstrate that it's morning. You can make Ollie yellow if you want to demonstrate nap time. And really, children do not understand time until they're like 3.5 or 4. And so oftentimes we'll have to use Tot Clocks to help represent time to them. So if you say, I'll see you in the morning, like they literally don't understand that. But if you say, I'll see you in the morning when hatch is green, then they can start to comprehend that. And so when they look at their hatch and their hatch is red, they know red means it's time for beds. But the thing about using a Tot Clock, and again, hatch is like the version of an app generated Tot Clock. It just looks a little bit different like this, but the same concept is that number one, you have to make sure your child's the right age. Okay, so the youngest I've seen a child really truly understand the hatch concept, meaning if the light is red, it's time for bed, or if the light is green, you can get up. The earliest I've ever seen a child really get that is 2.5. Where I really see this become really, really, really useful, where they can really get it and hold it and hold the expectation they won't get out of bed until it's green, is not until they're closer to 3 or 3.5. But the key is that unless you're practicing with them during the day what the colors represent and what the expectation is for them, then they're not going to get it. So Richard is asking, like, how long will it take for my child to respect the red light of the baby hatch? Well, the first question I would ask is, how old is he? Number one. And number two, how long have you had the hatch? And number three, most importantly, are you practicing during the day to show your child when the hatch is red, it's time for bed. When the hatch is green, it's time to get up. When the hatch is yellow, it's nap time, and talking about it over and over and over again so that they really understand. So that's how I would use the Tot Clock. And you just have to make sure your child is really developmentally ready to do it. And like I said, the youngest I've seen a child get it, but not even 100% get it, has been, around 2.5. Okay, so let me scroll down. Let me scroll down, see if there's any other questions. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So yes, so Richard, okay, great. Yes, so I just answered the question about baby hatch. So let me come back up here and see if there's anything. Okay, so Lisa Dure asked, is reading to them and snuggling a sleep crutch? Okay, so this is okay, great question, Lisa. So let's talk about this. So again, you guys, it's so weird. I'm not seeing you and talking to myself. It's like I'm just talking to myself in my office. But here's the deal. When someone says, what does it really look like What, I'm always reading in all these sleep books, what is drowsy but awake? Like, what does that mean? I don't even understand. So this is how I explain it. And so I want you to kind of start visualizing in your own life what this might look like for you. Okay. When a child truly, truly has independent sleep skills, meaning they're able to regulate, settle, and soothe to sleep without anybody doing anything to and for them, this is what it's going to look like. This is my sleepy scale. 1 is your child's wide awake, 10 is your child's dead asleep. When your child totally has awesome sleep skills, they're able to go into their independent sleep space, either crib or big boy bed or big girl bed, or even the co-sleeping environment, but they go into their independent sleep space, drowsy but awake, 5 or 6 on the drowsy scale, and they're able to regulate, settle, and soothe themselves 100% to sleep, meaning they're moving themselves down that sleepy scale 100% by themselves without anybody doing anything to and for them. Okay, so that's what, when a child fully has independent sleep skills at the onset of sleep, that's what it looks like. So remember, a sleep crutch or a sleep prop or a negative sleep association, how that's defined is anything that has to be done to or for a child at the onset of sleep at bedtime. They will typically need some version of that same assistance at every arousal point in the night. Okay, so Lisa's question is reading to them and snuggling a sleep crutch? Could be, okay, because here's the deal. If you read to them and snuggle them, and then you stop the reading and the snuggling at level 5 drowsy, and then they regulate, settle, and soothe themselves to sleep without anyone doing anything, then no, reading and snuggling is perfectly fabulous and appropriate. In fact, that sounds like a beautiful, beautiful nighttime routine. However, if while you're reading to them and while they're snuggling with you and they're hearing your voice, they're going down the sleepy scale, like you crawl into bed together and you start reading, and all of a sudden they're 6.5, they're 7, they're 8.5, they're 9, they're almost falling asleep on you. They're still awake, but they're getting really drowsy and they're drifting off to your beautiful voice, and they're snuggling with you, so you feel good and you look good and you smell good, and they're just really drowsy. They're like 9.5. If that's what's happening, then yes, you're in danger zone for a sleep crutch. So, because what happens is even though they might be a little bit awake when you leave 9.5, what's happening is they're crashing out for the end of their, at the onset of sleep, they're kind of like falling off the cliff, kind of crashing out. And so when they wake up in the middle of the night, they haven't really learned their sleep skills deeply. So you might have jagged nights where sometimes she sleeps all night long and you're like, whoa, that was easy. And sometimes she'll wake up and be like, mama, mama, because she fell asleep at 9.5 and fell off the cliff. She wasn't practicing regulate, settle, soothe to sleep by herself with nothing, but nobody doing anything to and for her. So I'm hoping, Lisa, that gives you a little bit of more visual to kind of double check where she is on her sleepy scale once you're physically leaving her. If she's falling dead asleep on you while you're snuggling and reading, then unfortunately you've by accident created a sleep crutch. And let me be really clear with you guys. This is super duper important. There's nothing wrong with sleep crutches, okay? They're not bad. They're not dangerous. And in fact, some children, sleep crutches work fabulous. And they work fabulous for years. And they're super easy and they're super fast. And it's very loving and beautiful. And it's gorgeous. Great. If that is your experience, awesome. Don't change a thing. But what the families that end up having sleep struggles are the families that say, oh my gosh, I used to be able to easily help my baby go to sleep. I used to be able to read to them and snuggle them, and it took me 10 or 15 minutes and they'd sleep all night, and it was awesome. And then all of a sudden the reading took 40 minutes, and then the reading and snuggling took an hour and a half. And then my child wanted me to sit next to them, and then they wanted me to hold their hand while I was sitting next to them, and then they wanted me to lay down with them. And then I wanted dad to do it, and